Well, perhaps I should start. I think in the description, I'm not sure, how much of that got into, the program. It might, it enumerates a few of the texts that we'll be exploring. But I think it also says sound or sounds. So we could begin with that. Yes, a shofar. And I'm not very good at the shofar. I mean, I'm not a professional. Oh, you can, very good. What do we have there? So do we have page 1? Yeah. No, that's page 2. Let's start with page 1. If you have it. No? All right, if you can come up with page 1, we'll start with that. Yes? No? Can you hear me? I'm sorry. Okay. And can you hear me? No?
We can't hear you.
We can hear you.
Ah, you can. All right, so there's difficulty getting to page 1? Hmm. Ah, okay. All right. You see, I'm not really, I don't know really. Well, you can see, did you hear that attempt? Is the
Yes.
volume still? Yeah.
Yes, we heard it.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. So I mean, there are words, but then there's something beyond words that I think that's one of the suggestions of the shofar, that we try, and what's ironic and rich at the same time, is that what most characterizes the days of Yamim Noraim, the days of awe, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippurim, is a lot of prayers. I'm not just saying that myself. The Chazal, the rabbis themselves, came up with that. We have an awful lot of prayers, and amidst these prayers, you have the phrase often repeating, Ma nomar u'ma nesaper. What can we tell you? What can we say? So we're really trying to rummage through every single way to say it with language, but then we actually repeat throughout this phrasing, Ma nomar u'ma nesaper. What can we really say before you? And then the shofar, blasts, which is something beyond words. But with the words, I'm looking on page 1, and if you have it there, you can see it. And at the top on the left, it quotes from Salachti ki dvarecha, I forgive according to your deed. I forgive, but it's going to be according to your word, to your deed. But I think one approach that we seldom encounter to these words is really the answer. I mean, here is the answer already. Hare salachti ki dvarecha. I've forgiven according to your word. In other words, what are you asking? My translation is, what are you asking me for? It's according to your word. And of course, davar in Hebrew, classical Hebrew anyway, also means deed. So you're seeking pardon from me, whatever that involves, but you have to find it in yourself. Well, and then you have the list of Ashamnu, Bagadnu, that's on the first page in Hebrew letters. Gazalnu, we have been in error, we've hurt, we've stolen, and then it says, Manu mar lefanecha. What can we tell you? What can we tell you? And then a name for God, Shochein Shechakim. You dwell among the clouded sky. You're beclouded. The divine is unclear to us, rather inaccessible, really. So you're going to have to find a way to forgive yourselves or something. People are always saying, I don't know, God will help my wife, my husband, my son, my daughter from cancer. God help us with the Miron, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, as Miron in Israel, this terrible tragedy where, yes, something collapsed, where thousands of people were exiting and people died. Where is God in all of this? And I mean, I think that we think of God as a kind of a human being who intervenes in our lives. Now, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, ethically, the divine is in our lives, is in mine. When I pray, I'm standing against Mul, opposite me is infinity. I think I included a poem by Emily Dickinson in our pages. Do you see it there? Yes, page 3. I've got 3 different drawings I've tried of Emily Dickinson here at home.
Steve, we only were sent page 2, so we don't have page 1 or page 3.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
That's terrible. Okay. All right. Our friends there told me that they successfully had all 4 pages. Okay. So we'll do the best we can. Can you see, this is the first of my drawings of Emily Dickinson. I don't know if you can see that. Here there's more light. This was my second or third try. Can you see it a little bit? Emily.
We can see it.
Yeah.
And I'll share with you in a moment why I tried 3 times, and even the first one already. Can you see this one? Is it? Yeah.
Yes, we can see.
She has a kind of a skeptical minded face in mind. Very often, a lot of people think of Emily Dickinson with a certain sentimentality, that her poetry and ideas about life are rather sweet. And but here's one of her poems. My period had come for prayer. My period had come for prayer. No other art would do. My tactics missed a rudiment. Creator, was it you? I was missing, I was all set to pray and the art of praying, but I was missing something. A creator, was it you? And is there another light here? All right, anyway. God grows above, so those who pray, horizons must ascend. And so I stopped upon the north to see this curious friend. The north might refer to the book of Job, because it figures there a lot. The cold north, as it were, the severe north. And she knew her Bible very well. And so I stepped upon the north to see this curious friend, God, a curious friend. Curious here meaning really a kind of a stranger, kind of difficult, if not impossible, to really know. Third stanza, his house was not, no sign had he by chimney nor by door. Again, she's saying in different ways, yes, that it's kind of very difficult, what we call God, the divine, to pin it down, to define it, to, you know. His house was not, no sign had he by chimney nor by door. Could I infer his residence? Vast prairies of air. So first of all, it's vast, infinite, infinite, infinite. And I know, when I pray, and even when I'm not praying, and here we have to say, but, because it sounds like what I'm saying, God isn't involved in our lives, can't change the messes that we get ourselves into, etc. God isn't like a human being, nothing like a human being at all. Sounds like I'm saying I don't have any experience of the divine, but I do, very much so. When I pray, I stand in prayer. When I come up to the bima to say when I'm called up for the Torah and I say the blessings, I say each word very, very separately almost, and with trembling, because I really find myself in the presence of this. But this is infinity. Infinity is the source of everything. But and that accompanies me when I'm walking, when I'm doing everything I'm doing. But it's not about me. As I'm older, I was born with a bent spine, curved spine, and an extra vertebra. And then my foot needed an operation about 4 years ago. And it was partially successful, but not fully. And so in walking, I'm bent over, etc. Everybody in Jerusalem, 60% of people, something like that, they're always wanting to help me. I get on a bus, they want to give me a seat on the bus. I'm waiting in line in a store, they want me to get in front of them in line. I'm walking down the street and actually while I'm walking down the street. For example, the other day, an 8 or 9 year old with his mother, I assume, says to me, a complete stranger, can I help you carry something? So I'm a stubborn person. And so I usually don't let them give me a seat on the bus or whatever. But I always give this little speech. In Hebrew, I say, Aval ein lamala mi hitchashvut bezulat. There's nothing higher than considering the other person. Zulat, a fancy word for ha'acher. There's nothing greater than, thinking of another person, not me. And then I add, that's the rabbis, that's the whole Torah, that's dance, music, theater, art, ballet, philosophy, literature. It's all about, it's the other, another idea, the other person. Now, what does this have to do with God? What about the Shema? What's the last word in the Shema? Echad. Most of us, the vast majority, even rabbis and everybody, think of the Shema as saying, we are all, the word one. We are all one. We feel close to God. We're close to God. We're one with God. The rabbis of the Mishnah and the Talmud, of course, there were different opinions, but very much many of them, if not most, if not for sure most, they saw the Shema being about what they called in Hebrew, Yichudo Shel Hashem, Yud Chet Vav Dalet. The same root, it's to the word Echad. But Yichud means, what does Yichud mean? God is unique God is one of a kind, if you want to play off the word one. One of a kind. It's nothing like anything we know, except perhaps, again, we can stretch the mind a little bit towards what is infinite and what is unique. And then what we try to do, now, then we come to Emmanuel Levinas, if you've heard about this philosopher, and Franz Rosenzweig, both. They said, we can't really directly engage the divine very much. You know, in the Bible, in Genesis, right, you've got a passage where it begins, God comes, shows itself, the divine, to Abraham. Yes? And the very next, right away, next is 3 Anashim appear. Yes, remember that? It's fantastic. It's just wonderful, wonderful. The divine appears to Abraham, boom, bang, the very next words, 3 Anashim come. Now, of course, Anashim in the Bible can also mean Malachim, messengers of God. It can also mean people. And there are the 3 Anashim. What does Avram do? He runs towards them and offers them sit in the shade, offers them food, offers them words of kindness and encouragement. So Emmanuel Levinas, Rosenzweig say, yes, because the infinite is the divine, it's got to actually be through the creatures of the divine, through the world that you respond to. And I'm back to Emily Dickinson for a minute. So she says, it's hard to infer God's residence. Vast prairies of air, empty, unbroken by a settler, were all that I could see. Infinitude, hadst thou no face that I may look on thee? Last stanza. The silence condescended. It let me, it went along with me. Creation stopped for me, but awed beyond my errand. Her errand, initially the first line of the poem is, my period had come for prayer. So she wanted to pray. But after this realization about the divine, she says, awed beyond my errand, my initial intention to pray, I worshiped, did not pray. She has in quotes, pray. Pray means to ask, etc. All right.
Steve, just to give you a
Yes.
heads up, we have 5 minutes left.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I don't know if you wanted to open it to Q&A or if the group would just like to hear from you and continue for the next 5 minutes. I'm going to put in the chat how to return back to our Bedam for the panel discussion, and then the decades following that. So just wanted to give you a heads up.
Yes.
Please keep going.
Keep going. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah. All right. You can always contact me in the numerous ways. I'd love to hear from you. I'm here in Jerusalem. But we have some, and also I hope you can get a hold of these pages somehow, afterwards. Listen to this, Nar hayiti v'gam zakanti, v'lo ra'iti tzadi. Yes, we all know that. I was young, I became old, and I never saw a righteous person or his children, his descendants, lacking bread, or in other words, in trouble. Okay? Now listen to this from Midrash Vayikra Rabbah. This is from the rabbis of the Mishnah and the Talmudic period. Afal pi she'oto tzadik avihem uvanav mevakshim lechem, even though his children of a person, a righteous person, children might be in situations of lacking bread, in other words, in trouble. That's an example. Lo yen ezav mi yirato shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Their father, and perhaps they themselves, will not know themselves to be abandoned, forsaken by the overwhelming being moved by the divine. Isn't this something? The Psalm says, right, you won't see the descendants of a righteous person in trouble. But then the rabbis say, hello, of course we do. But what does it mean they won't be forsaken. They won't be in trouble. It means they won't be forsaken by the sense of the presence of the divine that accompanies us. But it's not like some kind of, human being. Just a couple of more minutes or less. What can I say? Well, let's end with the great Jewish philosopher Virginia Woolf. Virginia Woolf. It's probably too long to read, but I'll start. Let's see, and we'll end with this. Not as oneself did one find rest ever. This is at the end of her book, To the Lighthouse, the very last pages. Not as oneself did one find rest ever in her experience, but as a wedge of darkness, losing personality, one lost the fret, the hurry, the stir. And there rose to her lips always some exclamation of triumph over life when things came together in this peace, this rest, this eternity. And pausing there, she looked out to meet that stroke of the lighthouse, the long, steady stroke that just returned no matter what was going on in the world. And here I'm not reading from there, but she talks about how then, the summer home where everybody came and celebrated, but then there was World War I, and some of her children were soldiers and they got killed, And she says, oh, it enters my mind this phrase that people have, we are in the hands of the Lord. Who had said that? Not she. And then she, reflects again. She says, how can we say we're in the hands of the Lord? There are these terrible things happening. There are wars. There was my children dying in wars. There is, what brought her to say that? We are in the hands of the Lord, she wondered. She started to mumble that phrase, The insincerity slipping in among the truths roused her, annoyed her. She returned to her knitting again. How could any Lord have made this world? With her mind, she had always seized the fact that there is no reason, order, justice, but suffering, death, etc. But then, I'm about to end, but then she says, she's knitting, and light is coming through from they're in the summer home. And she says, and the light from the lighthouse throws itself across the floor where she is. But then she thinks, watching the light like that, stroking its silver fingers in her brain, whose bursting would flood her with delight, she thinks she had known happiness. She has known happiness, exquisite happiness. And the lighthouse with its light thrown across the floor silvered the rough waves of life a little more brightly as daylight faded. And then she ends that it breaks upon the beach, the lighthouse's light, and ecstasy bursts in her eyes and waves of pure delight raced over the floor of her mind. And she felt, and then these last 6 words of the last six words of the book, it is enough, it is enough. Well, that's Vayachulu Hashemayim, and the heaven and the earth were finished in Genesis. So you see, she says that God, what we call God, it's not something that, intervenes in our life. It's up to us, that bad things should not happen as much as possible, cancer, all types of cancer, all types, the scientists tell us, are caused by the stuff we put in our foods and etc. And we could go on and on. Global warming, wars, terrible things that happen that we do to one another. So I'm ending now. I said I was going to end with that, but I'll just end with Menachem Nachum of Chernobyl. Well, we know what happened at Chernobyl. He was a Hasidic master, the first to carry the Tursky family name. Menachem Nachum of Chernobyl said, well, we've been given haftachot, promises, namely the messianic end, the messianic redemption. But we've also been given free will. Free will. If we mess up, human beings with free will, there's not going to be the messianic redemption. And I could go on and on. There's a tremendous amount of such ideas in our. When's the Messiah coming? He bumps into one of the rabbis, bumps into Elijah. Elijah says, why don't you ask him? But he's here already? Yeah, he's at the gates of Rome with the beggars. He goes to the beggars of Rome, you know that one? And he says, oh, master, when are you coming? You know, this would be a great time to come, the Roman occupation, etc. He says, today. Oh my God, that's fantastic. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi goes home. The day ends. He didn't come. The world is the same. He bumps into Elijah one more time. And he says, I went to the gates of Rome, like you said, and I saw him. But he said he's coming today. And the day ended. And so Elijah quotes from the Psalms, Hayom im v'kolo tishma'u. Today he's coming, if you will listen to his voice. Or Jeremiah is fleeing from the destruction of the first temple, and everyone's crying, and some of them notice it's him. They run up to him, they say, Jeremiah, console us. He says, if you would have wept one tear for Zion, in other words, if you would have listened, and if the king would have listened to my critique of the injustices of our society, we now wouldn't be escaping Jerusalem. And so Hakol b'yadei ha'adam is you won't believe me, but it is a frequent phrase among our greatest rabbis of the Mishnah, of the Talmud, sometimes in the Bible itself, Hasidic, etc. Everything is in the human hands. It's up to us.